But episodes 9 and 10, it really centers around the final 3 seasons, really two of the last 3, the 17 and 18 seasons within the New England Patriots, where after they complete the 28-3 comeback, Tom talked about how he was, he wanted, after winning that, he wanted to kind of set out and what he wanted to do, play till he was in his mid-40s. And it was a bit of where he felt he had the monkey lifted off his back, where he started worrying less about Bill's opinion. And that was when kind of the Brady brand took off. He was doing a lot more interviews. He was willing to talk more about what it was like in New England. Bill kind of felt like he was separating from the team, from team first all the time, which is what created the tension, along with Brady sending a lot of his teammates to go and work with his trainer, Alex Guerrero, which Brady talks about how if he doesn't think if he finds Alex Guerrero or starts working with him, he probably he definitely doesn't play till he's 45. He might not have even played till he's 35.
I don't think, Dylan, had he not found Guerrero, he doesn't come back from the ACL. Especially after he rushed it the first time and got that infection and had to go in for another surgery. I don't think Brady's body lasts, and I think his shoulder, after all those throws, hundreds of thousands of throws from New England to the offseason to Michigan to high school, if he doesn't have Guerrero in his plyometric training, he doesn't come back, and this second part of this Patriots dynasty doesn't happen. And who knows? Maybe the Steelers are the team of the 2010s. Or maybe we don't have a team of the 2010s, but I'm a firm believer after seeing this and after everything Tom has said about TB12 over these last couple of years, if it wasn't for Guerrero, the second half of this Patriots dynasty doesn't happen. And a lot of the players they talked to in these 2 episodes, Devin McCourty, Matthew Slater, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, we don't know who they are because the Patriots are not who they were as an organization.
Yeah, well, and in the building, it definitely they talk about it really didn't feel like it was. They said Gronk described it as it was 2 parents fighting with each other, like the nonstop fighting, the tension. It just puckered your butthole, as Gronk would say. But at the same time, it was they were still winning. They were still playing together. They were still winning, and it was still about doing your job. And then they find themselves in the Super Bowl, and he was like, well, there is this tension, but them continuously winning and finding ways to pull games out, it kept them building to what their goal was eventually wanting to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And then we get to Super Bowl 52, where it is in Minneapolis with the Eagles versus the Patriots, and the night before the game. And this is the disappointing, and I was hopeful that we were going to find this out, but I also was realistic where I didn't think we were gonna. I felt like there was too much hype around it where it was like, they're really not going to expose this. But Malcolm Butler was benched the night in Super Bowl 52. He played 1 play in that game. He found out the night before that he wasn't going to play. Right after they go to Butler, they go to Josh McDaniels, and they ask him about it. I'd be curious to hear Matt Patricia's take on this.
Patricia and Flores.
Yes, because they weren't in this documentary. Really, Belichick shut it down right away. Malcolm Butler just kind of laughed. He's like, I don't know. I still don't know to this day why I didn't play. And really the only intel that we got out of it was Kraft heard it was something non-football related between Bill and Malcolm, which, I mean, you can speculate all you want. The only thing that I think that maybe Malcolm Butler slept with Bill's girlfriend at the time. Like, I don't know what would be why he would bench him. Bill said he was doing what was, and this is where Kraft kind of started to feel the rift between him and Belichick and the team, was Bill's calling card was doing what was in the best interest of the team and putting personal vendettas aside, and Bill didn't do it. And they end up losing the game. I thought it was interesting that McDaniels said that early on in the game. He said that, like, I felt that the way our offense was going, we were going to be able to score every possession, and all we had to do was, and it was, and if they could just get one stop from the defense, they would have won. And they talk about guys on the defense is sitting there, they're struggling, they can't get off the field, and they're all looking over like, why isn't Malcolm in the game?
Well, and when you have a corner who played 98% of your defensive snaps all year before that, and Malcolm Butler, and then all of a sudden the night before or the day of the Super Bowl, you're going to tell him, hey, you're not going. But you're not going to tell your leaders on defense. You're not going to tell the vocal leader of that defense in Devin McCourty. You're not going to tell Kyle Van Noy. You're not going to tell Stephon Gilmore, his first year in New England. Like, you bring Gilmore in before that 17 season, and you got to feel like you have the best corner tandem in the NFL.
And who was that other corner on the opposite side with Butler in that game? I can't even think of him.
Was it something Arrington?
Maybe, but he was also that's who Butler.
That's who he replaced.
Took over for in Super Bowl 49. Yeah.
I don't know who it was, but it was just an absolute malpractice part on Belichick, and his ego got in the way. And I think Danny Amendola is 100% right when he said he felt like they got cheated out of a Super Bowl. And go back to what Devin McCourty said. Belichick doesn't even have the nerves to tell the rest of his secondary before. Of course they're going to get out there and get absolutely destroyed. Being in the secondary is all about having confidence in the guy across the field for you and communication. This guy coming off the bench who replaced Butler probably never played with these guys. They didn't have a cohesion. He didn't know how to communicate with them. Belichick's ego totally got in the way there and cost this team at the time a chance to go back-to-back. So it's a serious black eye on Belichick's legacy, because this is just unacceptable. And for him to, when the question is asked, to keep it so close to his chest and essentially have that skeleton in his closet, like what Ernie Adams did with Spygate, you can't tell me something didn't happen. So that, after seeing this, that will forever tarnish a little bit of Belichick's legacy in my eyes, because that's unacceptable. 98% of your plays he was on the field for this year, and all of a sudden before the biggest game of your life at the time or the season, you take him out there because you disagreed with you on something? Give me a break, Bill. Let him play in the Super Bowl and cut him after the game. Let him walk. But don't take him out right now and ruin your team's legacy because of this. Get out of here.
Yeah, and then the season ends and Danny Amendola leaves, and you don't see it too. You didn't see it too often, but he leaves. They kind of posts on Instagram. Has a post on Instagram, kind of thanking the Patriots, but excited to be where. What did he go to? Tennessee.
Tennessee to team up with Vrabel.
Yeah, and Gronk left a comment about being free and being happy, and then Tom comments on it and adds, well said, Gronk. And then we go into episode 10 and talking about, it opens with Jim Gray interviewing Tom, asking if he feels appreciated being in New England. And Tom, very telling, says he pleads the fifth. And going into that 18 season, Tom and Giselle went over to Robert's house and talked about how they didn't feel appreciated, and said that, in between Tom and Bill, there were some things that were said that can't be unsaid and can't be undone. And it got so bad to the point where Kraft was willing to work it out for Tom to leave.
Hypothetically speaking, where would he have gone? Or would they have traded him? They ain't going to cut him. What would have happened? Realistically, where would Tom have gone if he would have left the Patriots because it got that
in
bad?
2018? I'm trying to think who needed a quarterback. Well, they weren't gonna I doubt they would trade him to the Jets. That one's out of the question.
Not a chance.
In 2018, well, Eli was still there, but he was at the end of his run.
There's no way they're trading him to the Giants, though, after they beat them twice in the Super Bowl.
Yep. Washington had just traded for Alex Smith. But man, that is a good question. Tennessee, maybe, to be with Vrabel? I could
Dylan,
see that potentially being something.
You know what? I don't think they do him a favor and throw him anywhere in the AFC. I honestly feel it would have been an NFC team. And hell, who knows? Maybe he would have gotten his start in Tampa Bay a couple years early.
Could have. And but with that actually got in the end Tom decided to stay, but on one condition, is that Alex Guerrero was granted access back to traveling with the team and going with the team and being able to work with whoever he wanted to work. And in Kraft's time of owning the Patriots, that was really the only time he says he ever really got involved on personnel decisions. I think that only heightened the tension because Bill obviously was not going to like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with Tom going over Bill's head. And I can't remember who said it, but they said that the tension between the two, that actually pushed them to perform their best, which it makes sense because when you're the two of the greatest at they're at their crafts, they're out there, they're basically trying to prove each other wrong and outduel each other. And Kraft hoped that it would fix Tom and Bill's relationship. And it really wasn't, because it was to the point where Matthew Slater, longtime Patriot, would have to be the middleman. He was like, "No, Tom, I'm not going to go talk to Bill about something. You got to go talk to him." And it was basically like a silent relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, you saw the video in the Super Bowl when Brady was talking about some coverage the Rams were running, and he said, "Oh, Jackson's their nickel." And then Belichick wanted to correct him and say, "No, it's not Jackson. It's some other guy." And Tom walked away. He didn't want to listen to it. And you could see Bill's reaction like, "Okay, well, this fucker's not going to listen to me. He's just going to walk away. Okay, whatever."
Yeah, and that Super Bowl, that was one of Belichick's greatest coaching performances. I don't think there's any way of disputing that. I mean, holding the Rams to 3 points and throwing out a coverage with only 2 weeks to prepare, changing from man over to zone because he realized that the Rams and Goff have struggled in zone coverage. And Belichick said they felt they had a good game plan, and goes back to the Eisenhower quote that is, "Preparation is great, but once the battle begins, you have to fight the battle."
Mm-hmm.
And after they win and hold them to the Super Bowl, I think that was Bill's way of saying that, holding a high-powered offense like the Rams were that year, that defense can still win games. And Bill reestablished himself in Kraft's eyes, but in the end, it still really didn't matter. Brady didn't want to go through it again, and he felt that it was time to move on. And they asked they asked Robert that if Tom were to leave, or if Bill would have left, would Tom have stayed in New England? And without any hesitation at all, Kraft says that yes, Tom would have retired a Patriot. And we do have some breaking news. Blake Snell has signed with the Giants, 2 years, $62 million. But
has an opt-out after a year. It's a 1-year deal.
Well, Dylan, what's interesting is that Super Bowl, in a way, sure, the Patriots, they won, they got 6. That's two dynasties in one. But in a way, that almost hurt their organization more, because then Tom, for sure, like you said he was leaving. And had the Patriots not played well against the Rams, it sounds like Kraft was going to get ready to fire Belichick to move on and keep Brady. And Bill, making the awesome adjustments that he did, helping the Patriots win that Super Bowl, kind of gave him a second chance at head coaching career in New England. When Kraft was like, you know what, I'm not going to find anyone better than this guy. He is incredible. So success in the short term, but in the long term, definitely brought the Patriots organization back.
Yeah. And then they talk about the meeting that all three, that Robert, Tom, and Bill had over at the Kraft's house, and they said it. I mean, it was emotional. I think you can't undo, or you can't, look back with some sort of fondness about what those two did while in their time in New England. It was emotional, but in the end, they said it was the right time. They both had to move on. Relationship. Tom said that relationships are imperfect, but they were still incredibly proud of the journey, and I still think there's still respect and love for each other, but when they both knew it was time to move on, and being able to go on a run that they did for 20 years, it's incredible. There were times winning, it's not easy. It's difficult, and staying at that level, I think as a coach, you have to develop that sort of rigidness, that sort of attitude, or kind of turn into being an asshole to keep guys in line, because to get guys to buy in and continue having that sustained success, it's tough, especially at that level when everybody's gunning for you. Jimmy Johnson talked about it in the same way, where towards the end of his time in Dallas, that he didn't like the person he was becoming, because he was always the crabby, the grumpy coach, because he felt that there were guys that were just that they got their Super Bowl, but they were more so chasing after the check instead of chasing after a Super Bowl.
And Dylan, the one thing I found very interesting when they were talking to players about how they reacted and how they felt when Tom left New England, Danny Amendola had a very subtle shot at Belichick there when he goes, well, yeah, you could have had Johnny from Foxborough High School say it was a bad decision to let Tom go. And I say that was a subtle shot because whenever in team meetings, if a Patriots receiver would drop a pass, Belichick would go, Jesus Christ, Johnny from Foxborough High School could have caught this pass. What are we doing, Amendola? So in this documentary, he spun it back to give his shot at Belichick there, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Well, Danny Amendola had a couple of, he said they felt cheated, and, it was, they cost him a Super Bowl ring, but it was, I still stand by that. I wish they would have done it about 20 years later instead of 5 or 4, because 24. Yeah. So it was filmed 4 years after Tom left New England. So I think, to get that true, I think where everybody's removed from it, everything kind of the time heals all wounds, where you can speak a little bit more freely, not worried about the repercussions of things that were said. I think it would have been nicer for them to do it a little bit, wait a little bit longer. But I've also heard that this was, Robert, a way for them producing this was a way to try to get Kraft into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I've heard that's why it's they don't really make Kraft look bad in any light.
Well, they had an interesting time to do it, especially after his NFLPA grade came out, and as an owner, he got an F.
Yeah, well, so did the Hunt family. So,
but I mean, this is just me. But sure, I know owners own teams and yada yada yada. You shouldn't be putting an owner in the Hall of Fame. That's just me.
Well, there's plenty in there, so.
I'm not saying.
But I mean, that's also like
them.
back in the day too. Is that a lot of the owners of teams were also the coaches, GMs. Like Al Davis was a coach, owner, GM. Jerry Jones, which that's a discussion for another day. Paul Brown, for example. You know, you look back at the early origins of the NFL, a lot of those owners, or Curly Lambeau was a coach, player, GM, and now the Packers have everybody's an owner. All you got to do is spend a little bit of money, and you can get a sheet that says you're an NFL owner.
Good for them.